geeks! Last week, Elon Musk decided he was bored and figured it was time to throw Twitter into an all-out crisis. He had purchased over 9% of the company, making him the largest shareholder. And since this guy has a history of takeovers, Twitter scrambled to figure out how to include him, but also how to manage him. So a day later, Twitter's CEO excitedly announces that Musk would be joining the board of directors. And it looks like a match made in heaven until 4 days later, when Elon Musk wakes up in a trolly kind of mood. So he starts off by asking if Twitter is dying. Then he went on to criticize Twitter's services and says their headquarters should be turned into a homeless shelter. Then he jokes that Twitter should remove the W from its name to be called Titter. So the next day, Twitter's CEO announces that actually Elon Musk won't be joining the board after all. Yeah, seems like a good decision. Except now that Musk is off the board, he can buy up as much Twitter stock as he wants. So now he announced he wants to buy the company at $43.4 billion, proving that he's just a toddler with a lot of money. Twitter, good luck to ya. I got a lot to catch you up on, so before we start, please hit that subscribe button below, click the notification bell, and like this video. Since we last spoke, there have been both negative and some slightly positive developments in the Ukraine war. Let's start with Russia being kicked out of the UN Human Rights Council. You know you've reached another level of human rights abuser when you're so bad that even the UN Human Rights Council won't accept you. Russia also withdrew its military from the areas around Ukraine's capital in order to focus more on the eastern part of the country. And they did this because the military was spread too thin and facing too many losses. So while it's relatively good news that they've left these areas, what they've left behind reveals horrific war crimes and crimes against humanity against innocent civilians. And that gives a glimpse into how Russia's military will behave as it moves east. The Russians have already reduced the city of Mariupol to rubble, and the US and UK are investigating whether chemical weapons were used against civilians there. Now the next few weeks could be really dangerous in the run-up to May 9th, which is a major holiday in Russia called Victory Day that marks the Soviet victory over the Nazis back in World War II. Putin may want to claim some sort of victory on that day, so it's likely the Russian military will pursue an even more brutal assault in the east. And that's all but guaranteed, given that President Putin has just appointed an asshole general named Alexander Dvornikov to lead Russia's war in Ukraine. This guy is bad news. Dvornikov is known as the Butcher of Syria because of how ruthlessly he killed innocent civilians there. So President Zelensky is asking the world to give more weaponry as quickly and as consistently as possible. The US is sending a lot of military aid, especially as we brace for the next few weeks, but there's more we and the international community can do to help without directly fighting the Russian military. We can send all the aid and equipment Zelensky is asking for, including fighter jets. We can train more Ukrainian volunteers on how to use surface-to-air missiles, and we can recruit and train Ukrainian pilots. We can pursue some super sketchy cyber activity or tell the Ukrainians how to do it in an organized way. I didn't say that. Here's the thing. The Ukrainian military is a force to be reckoned with, which is an opportunity because it means our assistance could actually help bring this to an end. And given the atrocities we've seen, which President Biden believes amounts to genocide, though a formal declaration hasn't been made yet, we have a responsibility to protect innocent civilians. Finally, we cannot risk the world thinking that when dictators pursue atrocities, the US just won't be there to help. I know we can't be the world's police, but that narrative and sentiment is risky because it could incentivize dictators to pursue similar aggression all over the world. And we live in a globalized world where peace and security abroad matters here. If you don't believe me, just look at the price of gas. France's President Emmanuel Macron is facing a real fight in the upcoming presidential elections. Macron is a centrist, and he enjoyed a good level of support for a while, but public opinion of him decreased because voters feel he's been absent lately, and voters on the left feel he's moved slightly to the right with some of his efforts to boost the economy. For example, he wanted to increase the retirement age from 62 to 65. Excusez-moi, mais en France, we don't like this. Merde, c'est chaud. The economy has actually been improving, but there's still inflation and increasing oil and gas prices, so that's been undermining Macron a bit. His opponent is a woman named Marine Le Pen, who's a far-right candidate, and this is her third run for president. In fact, her dad also ran for president 5 times and lost each time. Take a hint! She's got a different platform, so she joined us to explain it. I am fiercely against immigration, and I am anti-Muslim. I also don't like the European Union, and I think we should drop the euro. I have supported President Putin in the past and his annexation of Crimea. My party has taken loans from Russian banks, including one that has ties to the Russian government, but I am sure this is not a conflict of interest, and I do not believe in NATO. Yep. Now she seems to be aware of how much her views have turned people off in the past. So for this campaign, she's tried to say more of what the people want to hear, like how she's gonna miraculously put more money in people's pockets and fight inflation. This isn't just any election. It's an election that highlights the rising far right in Europe and around the world. And if Marine Le Pen wins, not only does it portend a bleak future for centrists everywhere, but it could undermine the unity the US and Europe share in their efforts against Russia. I asked you all who you think will likely win, and 95% of you said Macron. I agree with you, but I think this election is a sign that we're going to be seeing election struggles all over the world against far-right candidates who support authoritarian leaders. And that's something we have to pay attention to. Pakistan's playboy of a prime minister, Imran Khan, has been ousted by Pakistan's parliament in a no-confidence vote. And get this? He blames the United States for it. Imran Khan started out his career as a famous cricketer. In fact, he became one of the greatest cricket players in the world. He became Prime Minister of Pakistan in 2018, and people there really liked him because he was philanthropic and he wanted to fight corruption. And once he became Prime Minister, he did. But he's been accused of only targeting specific corrupt actors, some of whom oppose him. Now, a number of Pakistanis have become disenchanted with him, in part because he couldn't fix skyrocketing inflation. But more importantly, he fell out of favor with Pakistan's military, which matters because the army there basically controls politics. So the parliament wanted to vote him out, which he tried to prevent from happening, but ultimately the Pakistani Supreme Court decided the vote should be allowed to go through. Now he's been ousted, and Shahbaz Sharif, who's a previous Pakistani political official who was in jail up until recently on money laundering charges, has been appointed until elections happen next year. I would ask why they have no one else, except we're not so great at having fresh new blood here either. Now Imran Khan is pushing a conspiracy theory that the US somehow orchestrated his removal. And the thing that just makes me laugh, having been on the other side of the US government, is do people actually believe we have that much influence in Pakistan? We couldn't get the Pakistani government to help us when we were hunting down Osama bin Laden, who was living there when we killed him. And when we've had Americans kidnapped by terrorist groups in Pakistan, we haven't been able to trust the Pakistani government to help. Imran Khan himself cooled the relationship with the US by moving closer to Russia and China. And he also allowed the Taliban to use Pakistan as a home base before they took over Afghanistan last summer. So listen, the US is probably happy to see him go, but the notion that we could somehow unseat him based on how little influence we have had in Pakistan all this time is a farce. I have some good news. Hong Kong's chief executive and Chinese puppet with not a backbone in her body, Carrie Lam, has announced she will not be seeking a second term as leader of Hong Kong. She said that she had to put her family members first and feel it's time for her to return home. Is home Beijing? Because I'm pretty sure no one in Hong Kong wants you around. Carrie Lam became Hong Kong's first woman leader 5 years ago, officially giving women a bad name everywhere. She will forever be known as the person who handed over the island in which she was born to the Chinese regime and who helped the Chinese Communist Party cement its control over it. That's not a leader, that's a coward. She's also dumb as a rock, since Hong Kong was essentially an ATM machine for China, and her effort to help China quash Hong Kong's freedoms completely undermined its economy. So it's great she's leaving, but her likely successor could be even worse. This position is appointed by a mostly pro-Beijing election committee, and the only person who's thrown their hat in the ring is Hong Kong's former security chief, John Lee. Everyone else be like, I don't want that job. Now, his only background is in security and the police, and he oversaw the handling of Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests in 2019, so he clearly has a penchant for harsh crackdowns. So it doesn't look like Hong Kong will be inching closer to democracy anytime soon. For that reason, both Carrie Lam and her little minion are on my list this week. I lost a friend and a former colleague and partner in crime I want to tell you about. His name was Daniel Moger, and he recently passed away from complications due to COVID. I worked with Dan at the US Department of the Treasury, where he worked passionately to dismantle the financial networks of bad actors like terrorists, proliferators of weapons of mass destruction, drug traffickers, human rights abusers, and dictators. So the Russia sanctions you see in the news all the time, that's an example of the kind of work he did. He fought for this mission with unmatched excitement and devotion. He was a master strategist, and he was also genuinely kind and super fun. Even when he left government to work for Citibank a few years ago, he continued to fight for this mission. And one of the reasons I wanted to put Dan on my crush list is because he represents thousands of faceless American public servants, these unsung heroes who fight daily to keep us safe from threats we're not even thinking about. So I wanted to honor Dan and celebrate him publicly because his work really mattered. If you're interested, you can make a donation in Dan's memory to Outright Action International in support of human rights and the dignity of LGBTQI people everywhere. Rest in peace, dear friend. Thanks for watching, geeks. I know we covered a lot, so thanks for sticking with me. If you haven't had enough, you can always follow me on Instagram and TikTok for more political satire. Before you go though, please like this video, click the subscribe button and the notification bell, and if you have something you want me to talk about, reach out to me over social media and I will definitely give you a shout out. Stay fabulous, geeks.